Joining me now is Matt Sheffield. He's in the studio as well. Matt, great to have you here. So you were a conservative activist. You were one of the founders of Newsbusters. So no joke, not like a little conservative activist, but a very significant one. So for people who don't know, what was Newsbusters?
Well, it's still around today. It's basically an anti-media website that says the media is too liberal, they're biased against conservatives.
So being a founder of that makes you significantly conservative, to say the least. And you also went after Dan Rather, even before then?
Yeah, I was one of the very first bloggers, actually before there was even a word that was invented for it. And I was part of a group of people that said, well, look, these look like he's using fake documents here, and and we proved the evidence, and that was the case.
So, what made you so conservative?
It's an interest. I think it was just my upbringing. My parents were they're very Mormon, very religious, and I think I just sort of came into it that way.
And so. You were in the middle of writing a book about the conservative movement, is that right?
I was, yeah. So, and that was sort of what made me change my perspective was that, so this was 2012, so before Trump came along, I started writing a book because I thought that Mitt Romney might lose. Or if he won, I didn't feel like conservatives would have learned anything from the big Obama loss in 2008. And in the course of writing it, basically I realized that, I could write the best book ever and it wouldn't matter because they want to believe things that are stupid. They want to have policies that people hate because they actually believe them. And nothing I could say or would make them change their minds that, you should cut taxes for rich people all the time and who cares about poor people because, well, you know what, maybe they're morally wrong and they deserve to be poor. That's a very common thought.
So you thought the root of conservatism was correct, obviously at the time you thought, but that some of the followers were just a little misguided. And when you started doing research for the book, you came to find out they weren't the minority, they were the majority.
Well, it was that I thought the leaders were just dumb. But what I realized was that, well, they're both dumb and evil for a lot of them. And in the case that they're constantly scamming each other. And that's something that I think a lot of progressives, you don't see a lot of coverage of it in the mainstream press, but conservative groups have these mailing lists. Like a lot of media companies have mailing lists, right? But a lot of conservative organizations, they rent out their mailing list to companies that are literally have been convicted of fraud. And this is not just Alex Jones that does it. These are people, like Ben Carson even was hawking magical cinnamon medical miracles. Literally, if you just take some freaking cinnamon and eat a whole bunch of it, then you'll cure your cancer, or nonsense like that.
Well, in a sense, isn't a conservative audience the perfect mark for that? Because they're willing to believe in fundamentalist version of religion, and they're willing to believe authoritarian leaders. So if those leaders say, "Hey, I got a magic cure for you," I mean, you couldn't find a better demographic in a sense.
Yeah, I think that's kind of true. And if you look at again, that's the background that they come in. Like you look at the quality of conservative punditry has just gone into the toilet. And this is before Trump, you look at early National Review, they had guys who were philosophers who were writing in there and professors, they were writing books that, took them years to write because they were so complex. And now you've got these people who just, they have nothing like Sean Hannity or Ben Shapiro. These guys don't know anything about anything, even their own ideas. They have they don't know what they're talking about.
So you noticed the rise of white nationalism well before Trump. So a lot of people think, no, it's just Trump. Why do you say it was pre-Trump?
Oh, well, it's totally mistaken to think that this is a Trump thing. And you can't beat it unless you realize that. Because what happened was that for a lot, there's basically two reasons. One is that conservatives have economic views that everyone hates. So, Barry Goldwater ran as the pure proof, right-wing economics candidate, and he got he got wasted in 1964. And so ever since then, they've decided, well, we can't give people the full strength of our ideas because they hate them. So instead, we're going to get them to think about other things. And so, so before it was, we got to stop, we got to stop the communists from the Soviet Union, and those guys were awful. They were evil, no question about it. They deserve to be stopped. But on the other hand, having that as an objective doesn't mean that you can go and pick people's pockets and destroy labor regulations and things like that. And so, but what's happened though is that they've done a bait and switch on their own audience, and they'll go and tell the conservative activists that if you want to protect the family, well then you need tax cuts for billionaires. Like, what does that have to do with anything to protect the family? Nothing. But they don't connect the dots, and their media is so anti-intellectual that nobody ever calls them on their nonsense. And so what's happened is that the agenda that the Republican elites pursued basically undermined the very things that their voters actually wanted, which was like to protect family or to promote community stability or things that are bipartisan wants, but like conservatives want them a little bit more, right?
So you're not the first person to notice this, and there's been books written about it. But I'll tell you, even talking to you both off air and on air, it's really sunk in more for me that it was a very clever plot by business leaders to go find the easy mark in the country. So who are the guys who will work against their own economic interests and give us whatever we want? Well, the guys who accept things based on faith and based on nothing else. We don't have to give them evidence. We just have to say, yeah, Jesus loved billionaires.
Yeah.
I mean, it's preposterous on its face, but they've gotten people to believe it.
Or you don't even have to say that. You just have to say, these guys hate America and they hate God. So why would you ever vote for them? Don't vote for them. They're Satan's spawn, and that's it. Like that was their plan. And so, but in order to do that, though, you have to get these people. You have to get the Republican voters, and they have no idea what's going on and how they're being taken advantage of. Most of them, and so, but the only way that they can be kept sort of, on the reservation, if you will, to use the expression, is to keep them pissed off 24/7.
Yeah,
and that's what is causing this problem of white nationalism in the country, is that you've had some people for 50 years have been poisoned intellectually, and it's having an effect on them, and it's having an effect on their children.
My story is not altogether that different than yours. I mean, I was not a conservative or Republican leader, but I was Republican, and I remember both my dad and I having this awakening, and I remember listening to Hannity on the radio, and I was like, he jumped from one point to another as if they were logically connected. And even though I was supposed to be on his side at the time, I'm like, those two things were not logically connected. He just keeps talking loudly as if that's a substitute for logic. Yeah. I remember one day my dad called, who at that time had been a lifelong Republican, and he said, Cenk, I was watching Bill O'Reilly. I think he is full of crap. I was like, really, Dad? Why? He's like, he's saying things that aren't demonstrably false. And what if you were a Republican and you were open-minded, an overwhelming amount of evidence comes in showing they don't really mean it. They don't mean any of the things that they say. Yeah. They never want to balance budgets. It's just a trick to give tax cuts to the rich. And we told you that on the program for now 17 years straight. And that's why we were able to predict. I said, Trump, the one thing he'll get done, not the wall, not anything that the white nationalists want or the religious people want, et cetera. The only thing he'll get done is tax cuts for the rich. Boom, and that's exactly what happened. Yeah. But let's turn to religion. I mean, I know we've been talking about it a little bit, but how do you think that there's talk of Christian supremacy, right? So now there's a show on Netflix about the family, et cetera. And again, you were not the first ones to point it out, but you were inside the building, fairly significantly so. Did you see it with your own eyes, and what's the point of view there?
Well, it's for real. I mean, I saw people, say that various colleagues, they believe they told me, so-and-so told me I'm going to hell because I'm an atheist. And these are not conversations that normal people have in their workplace. You don't do that because that's and irrespective of whether you agree with that or not, you just don't do that. But that's sort of and that was one of the things that I found. So So I I left Mormonism before I left conservatism, and I became, agnostic atheist. I don't believe in any religion, but I don't think that you can necessarily prove that God doesn't exist. So that's my perspective. But what I found was that so many people that I was interacting with, basically the only thing they wanted was to have, for Christians to have more rights than everybody else. Like that was what motivated them. And it's interesting, and anybody can, if you can actually look at this yourself on anybody's, like a lot of people's Twitter profiles, just look at a lot of these MAGA supporters or whatever, they've got the red hats on their accounts, or they work for a conservative think tank. Like when you look in their bio, almost invariably the very first thing it says is Christian. And because that's their political, that's where they derive their political identity. And for them, they see, that's why a lot of the more extreme ones have gotten so crazy. And the religious right actually was on the anti-immigrant bandwagon before Trump was. There were people who are going, and in fact, Mitt Romney, when he was pandering to them in 2012, he actually said to them, we have a problem in this country that too many God-believing people are not having children, and so as a result, we're just losing. And he was literally repeating what has become the obsession of white nationalists today.
So Matt, last question real quick. So you mentioned they want Christians to have more rights. I'm sure that they would say, no, we're the victims and we've been victimized in this country and we just want to have the same rights.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so why do you think that what's your basis for saying they want more rights than the average?
Well, it's crystal clear. All you have to do is look at the rights they want Christians to have and then look at the rights they want Muslims to have. They don't want, for example, that if a Muslim says, well, I feel like it would be against my religion to have my child do the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, then that person is evil, they're a devil, and they need to be stopped. But if you have somebody who says that, I feel like my religion says that I don't have to serve gay people at my restaurant. Well, then that's a cause we have to defend. And they never, and somebody actually told me, he used to work at a religious right law firm. He actually said that they had a case of an Islamic congregation was having problems with a local city not allowing them to have signs, and they wouldn't take the case. And then literally a few weeks later, they had a Christian denomination with the exact same problem, and they took the case.
Of course, right. All right, Matt Sheffield is a journalist. He recently worked at The Hill, and fascinating story. I'd love to have you back on, talk more about your experiences. Thank you for joining us, appreciate it. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.